I've always been drawn to the unexplainable. The shadowy corners of human knowledge where science and reason dare not tread. I'm a third-year college student majoring in folklore and mythology. The small town where I live and study, nestled in the heart of the mountains, is steeped in its own share of mysteries and legends. It was in this setting, amidst the dusty shelves of the town's old library, that my story begins. It was a Thursday afternoon, the kind that whispered promises of rain but never quite delivered. The library was nearly empty, save for the occasional student and the ever-present stoic librarian. I was there for a research project, but as it often happened, my curiosity led me astray. That's when I stumbled upon it. An old, leather-bound book with pages yellowed by time, titled simply Arcane Rituals and Occult Practices. The book was filled with various rites and rituals, but one in particular caught my eye, the Shadowed Circle. The text claimed it was a ritual of ancient origin, allowing the practitioner to peer through the veils of time. The instructions were clear, but came with stern warnings of the dangers of peering into the unknown. Something about it captivated me. It wasn't just academic interest, it was deeper, almost primal. I needed to know more, to see for myself what secrets the Shadowed Circle held. And so, my journey into the unknown began. The more I read about the Shadowed Circle, the more it consumed my thoughts. It described a ritual that promised visions of the past and glimpses of the future, but at a potentially great cost. Every line in the book cautioned about the perils of awakening what lies beyond the veil. Yet, the lure of the unknown was irresistible to me. The ritual required precise preparation and conditions. It was to be performed alone, at midnight, in a room lit only by the soft glow of 5 candles. A large circle had to be drawn on the ground with specific symbols and runes inscribed within. At the north end of the circle, a mirror was to be placed, and the participant had to sit in the center, facing it. Despite the ominous warnings, my decision was made. I had to experience the ritual myself. The thought of uncovering hidden truths, of witnessing the fabric of time unfold, was too tantalizing to ignore. I gathered the necessary items. A large antique mirror I found in a thrift store, candles, chalk for the circle, and an object of personal significance, a locket given to me by my grandmother. That night, as the clock struck midnight, I began drawing the circle in the chosen room. The air grew heavy, filled with a sense of anticipation. I inscribed the arcane symbols with painstaking care, feeling a strange energy coursing through them. Finally, I sat in the center of the circle, the mirror before me and the candles casting flickering shadows. With a deep breath, I began reciting the incantations from the book, my voice steady, but growing increasingly apprehensive with each word. As I spoke, the room seemed to darken, the candlelight struggling against an encroaching, unnatural shadow. I should have been afraid, but my curiosity propelled me forward. The world outside the circle started to blur, the edges of my vision smearing into darkness, as if the room itself was being swallowed by the night. The air grew thick, heavy with a sense of something ancient and unfathomable, stirring to life. My heart raced, thudding loudly in my ears, yet I persisted with the incantations, each word resonating deeper within me. As the ritual progressed, the mirror began to change. No longer did it reflect the room and my anxious face, it rippled like the surface of a dark pond, revealing fleeting images and shadows that danced at the periphery of my vision. Whispers filled the room, voices that were neither male nor female, old as time and speaking in tongues long forgotten. The visions in the mirror grew clear. I saw scenes of the past, some familiar from history books, others personal and intimate. I watched moments of love and joy, but these quickly gave way to darker, more disturbing images. Scenes of sorrow, pain, and loss, wars, plagues, and disasters, faces twisted in anguish. It was both mesmerizing and horrifying. The more I watched, the more I felt myself being pulled into the mirror's depths. The room around me faded away until there was nothing but the mirror and its haunting visions. Time lost meaning, I was a captive audience to the relentless march of history's darkest moments. And then, the future began to unfold. It was like peering into a swirling maelstrom of possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Cities I didn't recognize lay in ruins, people running in fear from unseen horrors. Faces contorted in terror flashed by, similarly familiar. Fear gripped me. What had I unleashed? This was no longer a simple glimpse into the unknown, it felt like an unrelenting torrent of mankind's deepest fears and secrets. I wanted to look away, to close my eyes and end the ritual, but something held me in place, a force beyond my understanding, compelling me to witness these horrors. In the heart of this maelstrom of visions, a singular, harrowing moment crystallized before me. The mirror's surface, no longer just a passive display, seemed to be a gateway, and from it, something was emerging. A shadow, darker than the surrounding darkness, began to take form. It was a figure, human-like yet distinctly otherworldly, its features obscured as if made of smoke and whispers. The air around me grew oppressively cold, and I could see my breath fogging in the candlelight. The figure in the mirror reached out, its hand pressing against the glass, distorting reality itself. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, a primal fear that gnawed at the edges of my mind. Its voice, when it finally spoke, was like the rustling of dead leaves and the groaning of old trees. It offered me secrets, knowledge beyond human comprehension, the answers to questions I hadn't dared to ask. But its words were laced with malice, a promise of a price to be paid that was far greater than I could imagine. I realized then the grave mistake I had made. The ritual was not a mere window into time, it was a door, and I had unwittingly opened it. Panic surged through me. I had to end the ritual, to close the door before something irreversible happened. With every ounce of willpower I possessed, I tore my gaze away from the mirror, breaking the hypnotic hold the figure had over me. I scrambled to my feet, my hands shaking as I overturned the candles, smudging the meticulously drawn symbols. The circle, my only protection, was broken. As the candles went out, the room plunged into darkness. The oppressive presence of the figure loomed over me, but as quickly as it had manifested, it receded. The whispers died down, and the cold grip of fear loosened. I was left alone in the dark, my heart pounding, the echo of the figure's words still lingering in the air. In the suffocating darkness, I fumbled for the light switch, my hands trembling uncontrollably. The room, once illuminated, appeared normal, as if the nightmarish events had been a figment of my imagination. But the cracked surface of the mirror and the disrupted circle of chalk and candle wax told a different story. I sat there on the floor, trying to steady my breathing, trying to rationalize what had just happened. The figure in the mirror, the visions of despair and chaos, they were too vivid, too visceral to dismiss as mere hallucinations. The reality of the ritual and its consequences began to sink in. I had delved into a realm far beyond my understanding, and in my arrogance, I had invited something into our world. The shattered remnants of the mirror seemed to mock my hubris. I couldn't bear to look at it anymore, afraid that the shadowy figure might reappear. With a mix of fear and determination, I gathered every piece of the mirror and the ritual components. I knew I had to destroy them, to erase any trace of what I had done. That night, I burned the book and buried the mirror's fragments deep in the woods. The flames consumed the pages with an unnatural fervor, as if the book was eager to be rid of its secrets. I watched until the last ember died, a hollow feeling in my chest. Returning home, I found no solace in sleep. My dreams were haunted by echoes of the ritual, the whispering voices, the apocalyptic visions, the malevolent presence in the mirror. I woke up repeatedly, drenched in sweat, unable to shake the feeling that I was being watched. The days that followed were a blur. I avoided the library and the curious glances of my classmates. I jumped to shadows, at the slightest of noises, always expecting to see the figure from the mirror lurking just out of sight. The impact of that night lingered long after. The once familiar corridors of the college, the streets of the small town, even my own apartment, felt alien and menacing. I kept to myself, speaking to no one about the ritual or the horrors I had witnessed. The fear of being dismissed as delusional or, worse, of drawing unwanted attention to what I had uncovered, kept me silent. I couldn't escape the feeling that something had changed fundamentally, both within me and in the world around me. The mirror, though destroyed, seemed to have left an indelible mark on my psyche. This shattered image haunted my waking thoughts and my dreams, the constant reminder of the unknown that now felt uncomfortably close. The once thrilling allure of the paranormal and the occult had turned bitter. My books on folklore and mythology, once treasured sources of knowledge, now gathered dust on my shelves. I couldn't bear to open them, fearful of what other truths they might hold. Days turned into weeks, and the vividness of that night began to fade, but the unease never fully dissipated. I found myself avoiding mirrors, uneasy at the thought of what might be looking back from the other side. The mundane world felt like a thin veil, behind which lurked unfathomable darkness, just out of sight, but always present. As time passed, I attempted to rebuild some semblance of normalcy. I focused on my studies, on the tangible and explainable. Yet, a part of me remained trapped in that circle, facing the mirror, forever changed by the glimpse into the abyss. The story of the shadowed circle ended for me that night, but the questions and fears it raised remained unanswered, a whisper in the back of my mind. What had I truly seen? What had I unleashed? These questions haunted me, a constant reminder that some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed. I learned a hard lesson about the cost of seeking knowledge that was never meant for human eyes. The world is full of mysteries, some of which are better left unexplored. As for the shadowed figure and the horrors it showed me, I can only hope they remain confined to the shattered fragments of that mirror, never to emerge into our reality again.